Yeah, so I'll just share the process of how we arrived at qualifying where we are today. So because of COVID, last year's competition got canceled, so this became a 2-year competition. So let's get to it. So at the beginning of the year, they set some requirements for us. So the requirements this year were an altitude of 800 feet is the goal. There was a flight time of 40 to 43 seconds from the instant it launches to the instant it lands on the ground or hits a tree. Luckily, we didn't hit too many trees. 650 grams is our maximum mass with a 650 millimeter minimum length. And we have to carry an egg and make sure it doesn't break. Now that's easier to do, but at nationals, it involves flexibility. And at nationals, we want 825 or 775 feet. If there was a real nationals, that would be decided on a coin flip. But at nationals, I think they're just going to do 775 first, 825, whichever one you want to do first. And the flight time is adjusted by plus or minus 1 second. So we started off, the team always starts off pretty quickly after the requirements come out. We decided to use a program called Open Rocket to simulate the first design of our rocket. And you simulate all the masses, exactly how you're going to build it. And then you choose a motor, and you can simulate altitude, flight time, everything, adjust parachute sizes to simulate flight time. And this is how we arrive on a design. And once we have a design, it's time to build it. So this is just a couple pictures of the build process. We have nose cone and basic assembly on the left. We've got a motor mount in the middle. The motor mount is where we put the solid rocket motor. And then in the middle, on the right, we just have a picture of it being painted. I just tried to create a rig for painting. So it's just a ladder and a rocket suspended from the inside of the ladder. So after building it, my first flight was in September of 2019, and the goal was just to figure out what the rocket does, figure out what the rocket likes to do, and figure out performance. It weighed 345 grams that day, and we were using the E30-4 motor. What that means is, the 4 just means the delay between the motor burnout and the parachute deployment, and that'll matter in just a second. And we hit an altitude of 718 feet, so it wasn't too bad for the first flight. And I'll play the video.
6 going in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ray's a little short, not by much, but a little.
It's gonna land.
So that goes on to land 30 seconds later. And so if you notice in the video, they said it looked a little short. And what that meant is the parachute delay, that 4 seconds was a little short. And so you'll see that sooner or later, I'll show you that on this.
6 going in 5, 4, 3.
On this slide, we made a few design changes in the rocket. And so instead of that 4 seconds, we switched to 7 seconds to allow the rocket to coast just a little bit longer, so that when the parachute deployed, it was exactly at apogee, which fits the flight profile a lot better. So that just has a better flight, better ascent, and allows us to get to 800 feet more reliably. Also, during the process, we switched to a different nose cone. We switched from a parabolic nose cone like this one. We switched from this nose cone to this nose cone because I was able to hollow out the OGIF nose cone and reduce the mass. I was also able to gain a few feet from it just because it was a little pointier and weighed a little less. And we had a total of 8 launches before COVID shut us down. Then after COVID, because there were less people out there, I was at the launch site. We were able to launch a lot more since it was limited to only NOVAR members. And we had 20 plus launches since June of 2020. And the goal has been establishing reliability to be consistently within 10 feet of 800 feet, and that goal was accomplished. And the first flight after shutdown was on June 13th of 2020, and it was just the purpose of this goal was just to get back in the rhythm of things, get back to launching regularly and establishing data.
This is Navy
And then, of course, we had 3 qualification flights overall. We had our first one in April of 2021, this past April, and we had a pretty good score. It was a pretty good first qualification flight with a score of 18.2. And then our second 2 were this past Saturday on May 15th. And those were better qualification scores. And one general advice I was given was a score of 30 is competitive. So we hit 26.48, which is pretty good. The score is combined by taking the altitude, how far off you are, and adding 4 times the seconds you're off. So that's how I got a score of 10 for the second one. We were in the time limit as well as 10 feet off, so it's 10 points. The goal is, of course, 0 points, 0 feet off, and 0 seconds off. We did have one interesting anomaly during the process. On April 17th, we had on our second qualification flight attempt, there was a failure of the altimeter. So initially, it beeped out 904 feet, and we had a discussion on what are the possible causes of 904, because at that point, we wanted to rule out everything outside of altimeter failure. So we were able to discuss how the temperature and the rising air at that point may have contributed to about 20 and 30 feet higher, as well as motor variance would have contributed to about 20 and 30 feet higher. It was the same mass that we were using, so we ruled out mass, but motor variance and the thermals that day, the rising air, the hot air, we thought that could be the best indicator of why it went to 904 feet instead of 800. But then after unpacking the data, when we got home, we looked at the raw flight data, and it was obviously not a flight. And we discussed this in the meeting, we discussed this with our mentors, and I was able to get the flight thrown out because it's not a flight, and we don't know what actually happened. I was able to rule out a voltage drop because it did measure voltage, and the voltage stayed consistent. I still don't know what caused it. But I'm looking at the data and still trying to figure that out. And then here's just some basic flights. Over the last 2 years, we launched 32 times, ending last Saturday. And yeah, that's about it. And so I just compiled this to show show how many times we launched, show how much data we accumulated. Each of those has altimeter data as well. So yeah.
Yeah, so 32 times, that's a lot, and that's also why we're very thankful to the PTSA for their support, because each of these launches it's about $15 a launch, isn't it, with the motors that we're using this year?
Yes.
And this is actually a less expensive motor. Previous years using the F-class motors, I think we were up to $20 or $25 a launch.
Right. And launching 32 times is very helpful. Even though it's expensive, it's very helpful to establish reliability in the rocket. Launching 32 times obviously helped this rocket get to within 10 feet of 800 very reliably, and we were able to get better qualification scores than years past because we were able to launch so much.
Yeah, I'm really quite excited about these qualification scores. I sent in the qualification forms this weekend, and we're just waiting to hear back from TARC now. Hopefully we're in that top 100 teams.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
So we'll hear about that Friday, right?
Yeah, so if we go and look at the timeline here. So today the qualification flights were due on the 21st, which is Friday. They should be releasing the list of 100 teams that have qualified for the national finals. And they are doing satellite launch sites this year just for, for COVID. They're putting launch sites all over the country. The nice thing is, even in a normal year, the national competition is held at the field where we do our launches anyway, so we always would have home field advantage if we were on the if we're on the national competition. And honestly, I think that's kind of important, don't you, Sanjay? Because during the day, there can be significant heating and you get thermals and things like that, and we kind of have a feeling now, I think, for how the field changes as the day progresses.
Exactly. Just because we've flown on that field so much, we know exactly pretty much what's going to happen when we fly. And I think that gives us an advantage because we can account for thermals during the day, account for weather as it gets warmer through the day.
And so as you can see, the rest of the calendar is June 12th begins the final launches, and it looks like there are going to be 2 weekends of that, just to again accommodate social distancing and that kind of thing. Normally they do it all on one day, and it's I think last year they broadcast it live on YouTube. I don't know that they're going to be able to broadcast it live on YouTube this year, but we've got 2 weekends there. So,
It'll be interesting to see the spread of the teams throughout the country and see where they end up.
yeah. And then 28th is the awards ceremony. So hopefully we make it to the national finals, and hopefully we make it to the awards ceremony as well.